And you're watching Kim Wilson TV. My channel is dedicated to helping victims of narcissistic abuse escape and stay out. You may already know this. Most victims of narcissistic abuse, and I'm talking primarily about covert narcissism, will return and get back in that vicious looping cycle of hoovering and discard and all of that madness on average 7 times. Now, I'm probably at 7. Fortunately for me, my narc had crossed a line so grave that there's absolutely no going back. So that really worked out to my advantage, though he was trying to inflict ultimate evil on me. He did me the biggest favor. That worked out pretty good, and I want to make sure you get out and stay out too. We don't want you falling for that bait and hook scenario that they're so famous for, just to draw us back in to be more excessively crazy and abusive. You know what's there, and there's no reason to keep going back for it. So my channel is dedicated to, and I'm going to look forward to getting to know you. And thanks for joining us today in my porch. My soul. They said the contract was so good, they made me sign. I want to talk about and explore a little the dark and twisted side of the narcissist sexuality. Now, when you cannot experience love, feel love, give love, any of that sort of thing, and you're constantly getting yourself in a desperate supply search, and sex is very much supply for them, so they're constantly having to feed and feed like flesh-eating zombies. And when you completely remove the emotion of love from sexuality, it often starts to look a little dark and a little twisted. You're going to start seeing, noticing, some things are certainly going to be inappropriate masturbation, chronic masturbation, excessive compulsive watching of pornography, and incest. When love is completely removed from a sexual environment, it can go horribly sideways. And people need to really be aware, like, are you dealing with a deviant? Yes. This narcissism is a very grave form of mental disturbance. So yeah, you could very well be dealing with a deviant. And when you have emotions or feelings like power, manipulation, control, domination spurring on your sexuality, I mean, this is where you start to really see things like rape and incest and other really sick sort of scenarios, because this is just not a healthy sexuality. Narcissistic trait, activity that they really like to engage in, is known as psychological triangulation, where you've got a scenario where you've got you and your narc, and they're creating, a third entity. Now, typically that's going to be someone from their narc harem, someone of secondary supply source. And in my narc's case, it was very often his mother. He could very easily go to her, whip her into a frenzy, and she would just go off like, super flying monkey. She is by miles his best trained flying monkey. So, they'll often inject a third person, and the purpose of this is to intimidate you, lessen your value, to subject you to a feeling of vulnerability and fear and confusion. And this is why they do this, and they do this very, very commonly. Narcissistic psychological triangulation, if you're not outwardly seeing it, I would bet it's there. And if you take a look, I bet you'll see it, because narcs are tremendously unfaithful tremendously, and they don't want to hide it. When they commit an act of indecency against you, you have to know about it because you won't suffer if you don't. And though they don't have the balls or courage to just, admit what they've done, they're certainly going to be dropping hints, and if you look around, you'll start to see some anomalies. Estimate that 90% of narcissists cheat. Now, this has nothing to do with sex. This has nothing to do with love. This has nothing to do with human connection. It's trauma bond. It's very, very temporary trauma bond. And they do this because, much like a flesh-eating zombie, they just need instant gratification and supply, instant gratification and supply, and that's all they're doing is they're just gorging and stuffing their dead, empty souls, and this is what they do. Now, they are going to very likely try and stay in contact with you once you're gone, just like they stay in contact with everyone. This becomes part of a narc harem, and they have to constantly check in to make sure their narc harem is still intact. And though this is very low-level secondary supply, you know, any supply is better than no supply. They're like drug addicts looking for a fix. So it doesn't matter if they're inflicting cruelty on you, or they're getting laid, or they're eating an entire cake. Like, they're constantly going to the nature of the narcissist. Now, the cheating is really quite ironic, because they don't cheat when you're, in a difficult time together. They may actually love that conflict. That may sort of exhilarate them. So they're probably going to be more faithful then. It's when you're happy. And the irony of it is, when my narc would cheat on me, it was when I was happily in love with him. But since he can't feel love or understand love, he couldn't get that. All he saw was that I was happy. And well, we didn't have any of that. He had to immediately squelch that and crush that. So if he didn't leave telltale signs around, so it was very, very apparent he'd been cheating, then I wouldn't have known. And if I didn't know, I wouldn't be hurt. And that was not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is I would be happily in love with him. All he could see through his emotional detachment was that I was happy, and he always has to have one up on me, and since he couldn't be happy, he had to bring me down. And over again, until I finally just, put from the house with a well-planned exit strategy. And we're going to talk about exit strategies and planning and a safe escape in the next video. Now, one of the surefire signs that your narcissistic friend is cheating on you is that they are accusing you of cheating. Now, this can become almost relentless. There's a very strong likelihood that they're creeping your phone, creeping your computer, creeping all your social media accounts. They're probably driving around your work. They're probably following you when you go for coffee with your mother, because these are the sorts of bizarre behaviors that they commit. Now, because they're cheating, but it's so callous and so hardened over to them and it's not an emotional connection, and they have a just sensational sense of entitlement. So, to them, this is all okay. They're doing this, and they're well within their right to do it. And well, fuck, you deserved it anyways. And so there's all this stuff going on in their heads. So it's very, very easy for them to do this. Now, they're never going to have any remorse. They may say they're sorry, but they're most certainly not, because trust me, they're doing it again next week. This is really just about manipulating you, making you feel bad, making you feel devalued and unimportant, and that's what that's about. And the reality is, they're doing this to hang on to you, because they just don't understand that there you were, happy and in love, and you would have stayed, but then they inflicted all this harm on you, thinking they're making you stay. Meanwhile, you're running away now. I mean, the whole thing is absolute chaos, insanity and madness, and leaving is your absolute best hope for a bright future.
The robots took my soul.